The principal didn't understand why the autistic student cried at the door until the new student arrived. Michael Anderson arrived at school every morning at 7:15 and invariably found the same heartbreaking scene. Ethan, an 8-year-old boy with brown hair and sweet eyes, sitting on the floor in front of the main door, crying as if the world had ended. For 3 months, this routine had repeated without exception, turning the entrance of St. Mary's Elementary School in Chicago into a stage of daily suffering that no one could decipher. The crying wasn't a simple, childish tantrum. Ethan clung to his navy blue backpack as if it were a shield, rocking his body back and forth in a repetitive motion that increased as the minutes passed. His light blue shirt became soaked with tears, and the desperation grew with each second, echoing through the empty hallways of the still silent school. Jennifer Wilson, the boy's mother, arrived promptly at 7:20. A widow for 2 years, she worked as a nursing assistant in the morning and as a cleaner at night to support her son. The 32-year-old woman had guilt in her eyes, the guilt of someone who must leave while their child is suffering, but she had no choice. The goodbye hug was always rushed, followed by sweet words that seemed unable to reach Ethan in his private world of anguish. "Mommy will be back soon, my love. Be strong for Mommy," she whispered, kissing the boy's forehead before running off to not miss the bus. Michael watched everything from his office window, his heart heavy. At 45 years old, he had been running that school for a decade and had never faced such a challenging situation. Ethan had started studying there in March, and the first days were normal. The problem began exactly 3 months ago, on a Monday in June that seemed ordinary, but marked the beginning of a mystery that consumed the principal's thoughts. The man in the dark suit hurried down the stairs as he did every day. He crouched down beside Ethan, who continued to cry profusely, oblivious to the adult's presence. Michael tried different approaches. He spoke softly, offered water. He even brought toys from his own house. Nothing worked. The boy seemed trapped in an impenetrable bubble of sadness. "Ethan, can you tell me what's happening?" asked the principal, his voice full of patience and concern. The boy just shook his head no, the tears continuing to stream down his round face. Michael knew Ethan was autistic, but the medical report indicated a mild degree, and he communicated normally at home. At school, however, it was as if something completely blocked his ability to express himself. The school psychologist, Dr. Sarah Johnson, had tried various strategies. They changed the door's color from blue to green, thinking the color might be a sensory trigger. They tested different arrival times, classical music in the courtyard, sensory toys, even aromatherapy with lavender. Ethan kept crying, and the mystery deepened with each passing day. "Principal Michael, I'm sorry, but perhaps it's time we look for a specialized school," suggested Dr. Sarah on a Friday afternoon, after another session with no results. 3 months is a long time. This is affecting not only Ethan, but other students as well. Michael shook his head firmly. He had discovered that David Wilson, Ethan's father, had been a physical education teacher at that same school before dying in a traffic accident 2 years prior. The connection was too strong to be ignored. "I won't give up on him, Sarah. There's something we're missing, I'm sure of it," replied the principal, adjusting his glasses and looking out the window, where Ethan played alone during recess, always apart from the other children. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. A Monday in early September brought an unexpected new development. Olivia Taylor, a 10-year-old girl with long straight hair, arrived with her mother to enroll. They came from Austin due to her father's work, as he had been transferred to Chicago. The girl had curious eyes and a shy smile that lit up the school office. "She's a special child, very sensitive," commented Rebecca Taylor, Olivia's mother, as she filled out the paperwork. "She had some difficulties at her previous school, but we hope it will be different here." Michael Anderson personally welcomed the family, as he did with all new students. Olivia remained quiet throughout the conversation, carefully observing every detail of the school. There was something about the girl's demeanor, a maturity that didn't match her age, that caught the principal's attention. The next morning, Tuesday, Michael went downstairs as usual and found Ethan crying. But this time, something was different. Olivia was there, sitting silently beside the boy on the cold hallway floor. She wasn't speaking or touching him, just being present. To everyone's astonishment, Ethan's crying had subsided for the first time in 3 months. "Olivia, sweetie, shouldn't you be in your classroom?" asked Michael, approaching cautiously so as not to break that magical moment. The girl looked at him seriously and whispered, "He misses someone. I can feel it." The child's words sent chills down the principal's spine. How could she know that? Ethan continued to cry, but more softly, as if Olivia's presence brought some mysterious comfort. On Wednesday, Olivia returned to the same spot. This time, she began to hum softly a melody that Michael didn't recognize. It was a simple song, almost like a lullaby, but there was something familiar about it that he couldn't place. Ethan stopped crying completely and listened, his eyes still wet, fixed on the girl's face. Michael immediately called Jennifer. "Mrs. Wilson, could you come to the school earlier today? Something different has happened." Jennifer arrived anxious, thinking her son had taken a turn for the worse. Instead, she found Ethan sitting calmly beside Olivia, listening to the melody she was humming. The mother's tears were inevitable. "My God, this song," she murmured, bringing her hand to her chest. "It's the same one David used to sing to Ethan to help him sleep when he was a baby." Michael felt a chill. How could Olivia know such an intimate song from Ethan's family? The girl stopped singing when she noticed she was being watched and looked at Jennifer with curiosity. "Do you know this song?" asked Olivia, her voice sweet but serious. "My husband used to sing it to our son," replied Jennifer, still emotional. "Where did you learn it?" "My grandmother, Margaret, taught me. She said it was special, that it helped sad children." The mystery deepened when Jennifer revealed she had never met anyone named Margaret. Michael excused Jennifer from work and invited her for a longer conversation in his office. "Mrs. Wilson, I need you to tell me everything about your husband and his time here at the school. There might be important details we're missing." Jennifer settled into the chair, drying her tears with a tissue. "David worked here for 5 years, from 2018 to 2023. He was a physical education teacher, but he also helped with musical activities. He played the guitar and always said that music healed children's souls." "Did he ever mention a teacher named Margaret?" "Not that I recall. But David had many co-workers over the years." Michael decided to investigate the school's archives. He spent the entire afternoon in the dusty storage room, searching for old employee records. That's when he found a yellowed folder with documents from the 90s. There it was, Margaret Taylor, a music teacher who retired in 1995. Taylor, the same last name as Olivia. On Thursday morning, Michael was more anxious than Ethan. He arrived at the school at 7 o'clock to observe the interaction between the two children. Olivia appeared a few minutes later, walking through the halls with the familiarity of someone who knew every corner of that place. "Olivia," Michael called softly, "can I ask you a question about your grandmother?" The girl nodded, stopping next to the principal. "Did she work here at this school?" Olivia's eyes lit up. "Yes, she did. A long time ago. She's always telling stories about this place. She said she taught music to lots of children, and that one special student recorded a song just for her before he graduated." Michael's heart raced. David had graduated from that school in 1995, exactly the last year of Margaret's teaching. "Olivia, does your grandmother still live with you?" "No, she stayed in Austin. She's sick, that's why we came here. Mom wants her to come get treatment here in Chicago." Michael knew he needed to speak with Margaret Taylor. He asked Olivia's family for the phone number and called that same afternoon. The elderly woman's voice, though frail, carried an impressive liveliness. "Mrs. Taylor, my name is Michael Anderson. I'm the principal of St. Mary's Elementary School. Do you remember a student named David Wilson?" A long silence on the other end of the line was followed by a deep sigh. "David, my David. Of course I remember him. One of the sweetest students I ever had. He composed a song for me on the last day of class. He said he would never forget our music sessions. Mrs. Taylor, his son Ethan studies here now, and there's something very strange happening." Michael told the whole situation to the elderly woman, who listened in silence. When he finished, Margaret began to cry softly. "Principal Anderson, I need to tell you something I've kept to myself all these years. David was a very special child. He had learning difficulties, but music completely transformed him. He created a routine. Every morning he would arrive early, and I would play our special song for him to calm down before classes started." "What song was that?" "Sunrise Melody." That's what he named it himself. David said that when he grew up, he would like his children to hear that song every morning to start the day with joy. Michael felt as if all the pieces of a complex puzzle were starting to fit together. "Mrs. Taylor, by any chance, was that song played through the school's sound system?" "Yes. David asked me to leave it recorded. He got permission from the principal at the time to play it every day at 8 in the morning. It was his special moment." The principal had to sit down. He ran to the school's equipment room and checked the sound system. There was an old automatic schedule, set to play a specific track every morning at 8 o'clock. The problem? Due to an electrical renovation performed exactly 3 months ago, the outdoor speakers had been disconnected. Ethan had been waiting to hear his father's song every morning. When it stopped playing, his world fell apart. Olivia's arrival and her hummed version of the same melody had brought back an essential part of his lost routine. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just starting. Now continuing. That Friday, Michael made a decision. He called a technician he knew and asked him to come urgently to fix the sound system. Meanwhile, he talked to Olivia about what he had discovered. "Olivia, you saved Ethan without even knowing it." The song his grandmother taught him was very important to his dad. The girl smiled timidly. "Grandma Margaret always said this song had special powers. I didn't know it was true." By late Friday afternoon, the technician had finished the work. Michael programmed the system to play Sunrise Melody at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. He spent the weekend anxiously hoping his theory was correct. Monday arrived with a typical grey September sky. Michael had been at the school since 6:30 in the morning, checking everything dozens of times. Jennifer arrived promptly with Ethan, who began his usual crying routine at the door. 8 o'clock sharp. The gentle melody began to play through the speakers. Ethan stopped crying instantly. He raised his head, looked around for the source of the music, and for the first time in 3 months smiled. "Dad," he murmured, a single word that sounded like music to Michael's ears. Jennifer broke down in tears of relief. Ethan stood up by himself and walked toward the school door, still smiling. But when the music ended, he hesitated. It was then that Olivia appeared, humming the continuation of the melody her grandmother had taught her. Together, the two children entered the school for the first time in 3 months without drama, without crying, just following the song that magically connected their stories. But the calm only lasted a week. Margaret Taylor's health condition worsened, and she was hospitalized in Austin. Rebecca had to travel urgently to care for her mother, taking Olivia with her. Ethan became unstable again with the girl's absence, even with the music playing every morning. "He needs Olivia," Dr. Sarah explained to Michael. "The music alone isn't enough. Her presence created a new emotional association." Michael felt powerless. He couldn't force a family to return because of one child, even for a noble reason. He decided to try a different approach. He spoke with Ethan's teacher, Amanda Miller, and together they came up with a plan. If Olivia couldn't be physically present, perhaps they could create an emotional bridge through technology. "Ethan," Amanda said kindly, "would you like to send a message to Olivia? We can make a video call to her." The boy, who had become withdrawn again, nodded positively. It was his first voluntary response to an adult's question at school. The call was emotional. Olivia appeared on the tablet screen in a hospital in Austin, and Ethan smiled immediately. They didn't talk much, but Olivia sang the special song through the video call. Ethan hummed along, creating a touching moment that Amanda recorded on her phone. "I'll be back soon, Ethan," Olivia promised. "And when I come back, we'll sing together every day." That promise sustained Ethan for another 2 weeks. He still cried some mornings, but he could calm himself down by listening to the music and remembering Olivia's words. Michael realized the boy was developing his own emotional regulation strategies. Olivia's return happened on a rainy Thursday in October. Ethan saw her down the hall and ran toward her for the first time, something that shocked all the teachers. The hug between the two children was spontaneous and genuine. "You came back," said Ethan, his first words directed to another child at school. "I promised I would," replied Olivia, smiling. "And I brought a surprise." Olivia had brought a letter from Margaret Taylor. The elderly woman, even while debilitated, had handwritten a message for Ethan. "Dear Ethan, your dad was one of my most special students. He once told me he wanted his children to be as brave as he was. You are brave, Ethan. Every morning you face your fears, and that is very brave. Keep singing our special song. It will always give you strength. With love, Grandma Margaret." Ethan held the letter to his chest and, to everyone's surprise, read each word aloud, showing a reading ability they hadn't noticed before. From that day on, Ethan and Olivia became inseparable. They created their own routine. They arrived early to listen to the 8 o'clock music together. They sang during recess, and Ethan began to interact with other children too. Michael Anderson watched this transformation with admiration, but he knew other challenges were coming. Ethan still faced learning difficulties, and Olivia was being evaluated for possible undiagnosed special needs. A conversation with Rebecca Taylor revealed that Olivia was also on the autism spectrum, but with a late diagnosis. She had developed masking skills that hid her difficulties, especially her emotional hypersensitivity and ability to perceive the suffering of others. "Olivia has always been different," explained Rebecca in a meeting with Michael and Dr. Sarah Johnson. "She feels other people's emotions as if they were her own. It's a gift but also a burden." This revelation explained why Olivia had connected so deeply with Ethan. She recognized in him a kind of suffering that she herself knew intimately. Michael decided to create a special program at the school. With the help of Margaret Taylor, who had moved to Chicago to be near the family, they developed inclusive musical activities. Margaret, even with her fragile health, agreed to volunteer at the school twice a week. The first meeting between Margaret and Ethan was emotional. The boy recognized her immediately through the stories Olivia had told and the old school photos. "Grandma Margaret," he exclaimed, using the same affection that Olivia showed. "Ethan, my dear, you look just like your dad when he was your age," said Margaret, her eyes welling up. "He was also shy and sensitive, but he had a huge heart." Margaret brought an old guitar, the same one she used in classes in the 90s. David had learned to play on it, and now she would teach Ethan. The first attempts were clumsy, but the boy showed a genuine passion for music, just like his father. The music sessions became therapeutic for several children at the school. Michael realized that other students also benefited from the sensory and emotional approach that Margaret offered. Children with attention deficit, anxiety, and even some without specific diagnoses found peace in those moments. Olivia became Margaret's unofficial assistant, helping other children as she had helped Ethan. Her empathetic ability, once seen as a problem, transformed into a valuable skill. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Ethan still had difficult days, especially when there were changes in the school routine or unexpected events. One Wednesday in November, a fire truck siren passing by on the street during music time completely destabilized him. Michael found Ethan curled up under a classroom table, covering his ears and crying. Olivia was beside him, also visibly affected by the noise, but trying to comfort him. "Ethan, you are safe," said Michael, crouching down to the children's level. "Olivia, are you okay too?" "The noise hurts," murmured Olivia, explaining something she herself was learning about her own sensory needs. It was Dr. Sarah Johnson who suggested creating sensory spaces in the school, places where children with special needs could self-regulate. The project gained momentum when Margaret offered a substantial donation from an inheritance she had recently received. The sensory space was inaugurated in December. Their small room but carefully planned, with soft lighting, different textures, simple musical instruments, and a quiet corner with soft cushions. Ethan and Olivia were the first to use it, and soon other children discovered the benefits of the place. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Christmas 2025 brought an unexpected surprise. Jennifer had gotten a better job with more flexible hours, thanks to a recommendation from the school itself. Michael had spoken to an acquaintance in the healthcare sector about her situation, emphasizing her dedication and responsibility. "Principal Michael, I don't know how to thank you," said Jennifer during the end-of-year parent-teacher meeting. "Ethan is transformed, and my life is too." "No need to thank me, Mrs. Wilson. Ethan taught us a lot about determination and about not giving up on people." The Christmas presentation that year was special. Ethan, Olivia, and other children from the inclusion program performed Sunrise Melody for the entire school community. Ethan played a few notes on Margaret's guitar, while Olivia sang the lyrics they had created together. The audience was moved, especially when Ethan dedicated the performance to "My dad, who is always with me in the music." There wasn't a dry eye in the school at that moment. Margaret, sitting in the front row in a wheelchair she now used on her more difficult days, smiled proudly. At 72 years old, she had rediscovered her purpose, to use music to heal emotional wounds that medicine couldn't reach. The summer vacation passed quickly. Ethan and Olivia kept in touch through video calls and meetups organized by their parents. When February arrived and the 2026 school year began, they were both eager to get back to school. Michael greeted them at the main entrance, the very same spot where it had all begun. Ethan didn't cry. Instead, he greeted the principal with a smile and asked, "Principal Michael, can I help other boys who get sad at school?" The simple question carried impressive maturity. Ethan had transformed his suffering into empathy, his trauma into a mission to help. "Of course, Ethan. You and Olivia will be our friendship ambassadors." The program expanded during 2026. Ethan and Olivia trained to become buddies for other children struggling to adapt. They knew better than any adult what it felt like to be different and misunderstood. Margaret continued her volunteer work, even with the increasing limitations of her age. She had found a new family at the school, and the school had found in her a generous soul who gave knowledge and love in equal measure. One day in May, a challenging situation tested everything they had built. A new student, Emily, 7 years old, arrived at the school with a traumatic history. She had lost her parents in an accident and was living with her aunt. Just like Ethan months before, she cried at the school entrance and refused to go in. Ethan observed the situation and, without anyone asking, approached the girl. Michael watched from a distance, curious to see how the boy would handle the situation. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he said, sitting down on the floor next to Emily. "I used to cry here every day too." "Why did you stop?" asked Emily between sobs. "Because I found out the school has special music that makes me remember my dad, who died, and I found a friend who understands when I get sad." The simple conversation, without adult intervention, was more effective than any psychological technique. Emily accepted Ethan's hand and entered the school for the first time. Michael watched the scene with tears in his eyes. Ethan had become what his father would have been proud to see. An empathetic, courageous child, determined to help others. The cycle of healing had been completed, but a new cycle had also begun. Ethan was no longer just a child who needed help. He had become a child who offered help. For the rest of the school year, the trio, Ethan, Olivia, and Emily, became inseparable. They developed their own techniques for dealing with anxiety, created secret codes to communicate when words were difficult, and established a support network that worked better than many professional programs. Margaret documented everything in a journal, intending to write a book about the therapeutic power of music in inclusive education. Even with her failing health, she kept her mind sharp and her heart full of projects. At the end of 2026, St. Mary's Elementary School received a state award for educational inclusion. The program, developed by Michael, Margaret, and the children, had become a benchmark for other schools in the region. At the award ceremony, Ethan was invited to speak. At 9 years old, he climbed onto the stage with the confidence of someone who had overcome his greatest fears. "I used to cry at the school door because I was afraid no one would understand my sadness," he said into the microphone, his voice clear and firm. "But I discovered that when we share our sadness, it gets smaller, and when we share our music, it gets bigger." The audience gave him a standing ovation. Michael, watching from the side of the stage, felt he had witnessed something greater than education. He had witnessed human transformation in its purest form. Margaret, despite her advanced age and fragile health, insisted on being present at the ceremony. Seated in her wheelchair, she represented the bridge between generations, connecting David's past to Ethan's future through the music that never grows old. "You made your father proud," she whispered to Ethan after the ceremony. "And you made all of us proud," the boy replied, hugging the elderly woman with the affection of a real grandson. The following months brought consolidation. Ethan excelled academically, especially in activities involving creative expression. Olivia developed leadership skills, organizing inclusive activities that benefited the entire school. Emily flourished, transforming from a traumatized child into a joyful and confident girl. Michael watched it all with the satisfaction of someone who plants a tree and sees it grow. But he also knew that every child who arrived at school traumatized represented a new challenge, a new opportunity to apply everything they had learned. In March 2027, 3 years after Ethan's journey began, Michael was promoted to educational supervisor for the municipal school district. It was a recognition of the exceptional work he had done in educational inclusion. His last day as principal was emotional. Ethan, now 10 years old, organized a surprise presentation. He played Sunrise Melody on Margaret's guitar, while Olivia sang, and a choir of 20 children accompanied them. "Thank you for not giving up on me," Ethan said to Michael after the performance. "Thank you for teaching me that some victories are worth any effort," the principal replied, hugging the boy who had transformed not only himself, but an entire school community. Margaret, even with 90% of her mobility compromised, continued to visit the school whenever possible. She had trained 2 teachers to continue the music program, ensuring her legacy would live on. "Music is eternal," she often said. "It connects hearts across time and space." David knew this when he asked to play our melody every morning. He knew that one day his son would need that connection. Ethan's story spread beyond the limits of Chicago. Education universities began studying the case as an example of successful educational intervention. Documentaries were made, academic articles written, and Michael was invited to speak at educational conferences. But for Ethan, Olivia, and all the children who benefited from the program, the story wasn't academic, it was personal. It was about belonging, acceptance, and the discovery that differences aren't flaws, but unique characteristics that enrich the community. In December 2027, Margaret Taylor passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her final project had been to record a CD with all the therapeutic songs she had developed over the years, including Sunrise Melody in the original version by David. The funeral was a celebration of life. Ethan and Olivia sang at the ceremony, accompanied by hundreds of former students whose lives Margaret had touched over 5 decades dedicated to education. "Grandma Margaret taught us that everyone has a special song in their heart," Olivia said during her farewell speech. "Our responsibility is to help each other find and share that song." Ethan, now a confident and articulate 11-year-old, took on the responsibility of keeping the program that Margaret had started alive. He trained younger children, teaching them the emotional self-regulation techniques he had learned with such difficulty. The school inaugurated the Margaret Taylor Room in 2028, a larger, better-equipped space for music therapy activities. Ethan played the inaugural song, a composition of his own that he titled, "Thank You for Not Giving Up." Michael, now an educational supervisor, visited the school regularly. He always found Ethan helping some child in difficulty, applying the lessons he had learned through his own suffering and overcoming. "How did you always know it was going to work out?" Ethan asked during one of these visits. "I didn't know," Michael admitted honestly, "but I believed you deserved every possible chance, and sometimes believing is the first step to making it work." Ethan smiled, the same shy smile that had won Michael over years ago, but now filled with confidence and purpose. The Sunrise Melody continued to play every morning at 8 o'clock. New generations of children arrived at school, knowing that special moment awaited them. Some listened with joy, others with indifference, but there were always 1 or 2 who found in that song exactly what they needed to start the day with courage. Ethan graduated from elementary school as the class speaker. His speech was about resilience, the importance of adults who don't give up on children, and how music can heal wounds that medicine cannot reach. 6 years ago, I cried every day at the door of this school, he told the audience packed with families. I thought it was the end of the world, but I discovered that sometimes what seems like an end is just the beginning of something much better. Olivia, who had remained his best friend over the years, applauded him from the audience. She had developed incredibly, channeling her sensitivity into artistic activities and providing emotional support to her peers. Emily, now 10 years old, had become the new friendship ambassador for younger children. The cycle of healing continued, one generation helping the next. Jennifer watched the graduation with tears of pride. Her life had completely stabilized, a job that respected her needs as a single mother, a home of her own earned through hard work, and most importantly, a happy and confident son. Michael, who had returned especially for the graduation, spoke with Jennifer after the ceremony. "Mrs. Wilson, you saved Ethan by not giving up on him when things were tough." "No, Mr. Anderson. You all saved Ethan. I just brought him to you." "We all saved Ethan," Michael corrected. "And he saved all of us, too." It was true. Ethan's journey had profoundly transformed every person involved. Michael Anderson discovered that education goes far beyond curriculum. Margaret Taylor rediscovered her purpose in the final years of her life. Olivia Taylor developed her unique skills. Jennifer Wilson found a supportive community. And the entire school learned that inclusion isn't just about accepting differences, but about celebrating them. Years later, Ethan became a music teacher, specializing in inclusive education. He returned to work at the same school where he had cried at the door as an 8-year-old child. His first action was to install a sign at the entrance. "Here, every child has their own special music. Our mission is to help them find their melody." Every morning at 8 o'clock, the sunrise melody still plays. But now it's Ethan who adjusts the sound system and watches the children arrive. When he sees one crying at the door, he knows exactly what to do. He sits beside her, offers his silent presence and waits. Because he learned that sometimes healing doesn't come from words or actions, but from the simple certainty that someone cares enough not to give up. And so, the music continues to play, connecting past and future, healing invisible wounds, and reminding everyone that somewhere in the world there is always a special melody waiting to turn tears into smiles. End of story. And you? What did you think of this story of overcoming and friendship? Were you moved by Ethan's transformation? Leave a comment telling us which part touched you the most and where you are watching from. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one. Thank you for your company on this musical journey of love and hope.